Right now, on a hot day, the first thing almost everyone reaches for is a fan. You flip the switch, the blades spin, the air moves across your skin, and it feels like relief. It feels like safety. For most of your life, that has been true. But on the hottest days, that same fan can do the opposite. It can heat you faster than the still air around you. It can push a frail body from uncomfortable to dying in a single afternoon. And there is an exact temperature where it flips, where the machine you trust to cool you quietly turns into something closer to a convection oven. Most people have never heard that number. By the end, you will know it. And you will know exactly when to leave that switch alone. But to understand how a fan turns on you, you first have to understand something almost nobody stops to think about. A fan does not actually make air colder. Here is the myth, and it is a good one because it is right almost all the time. We believe a fan cools the room. It does not.
The blades add a tiny amount of heat from the motor, if anything. The air coming off a fan is the exact same temperature as the air already in the room. All a fan does is move that air, nothing more. So why does moving air feel so cold? To answer that, forget the fan for a second and look at how your body sheds heat in the first place. Your body runs hot. Deep inside, your core sits close to 37 degrees Celsius, and it fights to stay there. Every muscle you move, every meal you burn, throws off heat as a byproduct. And that heat has to go somewhere, or your temperature climbs. You have a few ways to dump it. You can radiate it into the air, you can lose it to anything cooler that you touch. And when the world around you gets too warm for either of those to work, you fall back on your last and most powerful tool. You sweat. Sweat itself does not cool you. A film of warm water on your skin does almost nothing. The cooling happens in one specific moment, the instant that water turns from liquid into vapor and lifts off your body. Changing water into vapor takes an enormous amount of energy, and that energy is pulled directly out of your skin as heat. Every drop that evaporates carries a little furnace of your own warmth away with it. This is the engine your survival runs on when it is hot. Not the sweat, the evaporation. And now the fan makes sense. When you sweat, a thin layer of humid saturated air forms right against your skin. A steel damp blanket only millimeters thick. Once that layer is soaked, evaporation stalls, because the air touching you cannot hold any more water. A fan blows that saturated blanket away and drags in drier air over and over, so fresh evaporation can keep happening. That is the whole trick. The fan is not chilling you. It is clearing the exhaust so your own sweat can keep working. Which means the fan is completely dependent on one thing: that your sweat can still evaporate at all. So here's the real question hiding underneath a heat wave. On any given day, can your sweat actually evaporate? And how fast? The plain thermometer on the wall cannot tell you, because it only measures dry heat. It ignores the one factor that decides whether evaporation lives or dies: how much water the air is already carrying. To measure that, scientists use a different instrument, and it is beautifully simple. Take an ordinary thermometer and wrap its bulb in a wet cloth. Now blow air across it. The water in the cloth evaporates, and just like sweat on skin, that evaporation cools the thermometer down. The reading it settles on is called the wet bulb temperature. It is the coldest that evaporation alone can make something in that exact air. And the wet bulb temperature tells you the truth the wall thermometer hides. When the air is dry, lots of water can evaporate, so the wet cloth cools far below the real air temperature. The wet bulb reading is low, and your sweat has plenty of room to work. But when the air is already thick with moisture, almost no water can evaporate. The cloth barely cools at all, and the wet bulb reading climbs up toward the actual temperature. A high wet bulb number is nature telling you that evaporation is running out of room. And there is a ceiling, a point where it runs out completely. That ceiling sits around 35 degrees Celsius wet bulb. about 95 degrees Fahrenheit of combined heat and humidity. At that point, the air is so hot and so saturated that your skin, sitting at roughly 35 degrees itself, can no longer push heat outward by any route. Sweat pours out and just sits there, unable to evaporate. Your last cooling system is switched off, not because your body failed, but because physics did.
Hold a human at that wet bulb temperature for a few hours, and the core temperature climbs no matter what. Even sitting perfectly still, naked, in the shade, with all the water in the world to drink. And here is the unsettling part. That 35-degree figure is the theoretical extreme. Careful lab studies on real people have found the true danger line is lower. For many, the body starts losing the battle closer to 31 degrees wet bulb. And for the old and the frail, it is lower still. Now bring the fan back into that picture and watch it change sides. Remember what a fan does. It moves air across your skin. As long as that air is cooler than your skin, moving more of it past you carries heat away. Good. But your skin sits around 35 degrees. So what happens when the air in the room is hotter than that? Now every gust the fan delivers is hotter than you are. Instead of carrying your heat away, the moving air deposits its heat into you. Faster and faster, the harder it blows. This is exactly how a fan-forced oven cooks food more evenly and more quickly than a still one. Moving hot air transfers heat into a cooler object far more efficiently than stagnant air does. Above that crossover, you are the cooler object. You are the roast. There is only one thing that can still save you at that point: evaporation. If the air is dry enough, sweat can keep evaporating fast enough to outcool the heat the fan is pouring in. And the fan stays your friend. But raise the humidity, push that wet bulb number up toward the ceiling, and evaporation collapses at the very moment the moving hot air is loading you up. The fan keeps delivering heat. Your sweat can no longer remove it, and your core temperature starts to climb. This is the flip. Hot air plus high humidity plus a fan is not cooling. It is forced heating with the emergency brake cut. And once your core temperature climbs past a certain point, the damage is not gradual. It cascades. When your core pushes past about 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, you have crossed into heatstroke. And it is a true medical emergency. Heat that high begins to warp the proteins your cells are built from. The way heat changes the white of an egg from clear to solid. Your gut lining leaks. Your muscles begin to break down and flood your blood with debris. Widespread inflammation ignites. Your blood struggles to clot properly. And organ after organ starts to fail. And the most heat-sensitive organ of all is the brain, which is why the first visible signs are confusion, collapse, and loss of consciousness. Without fast, aggressive cooling, this is how heat kills. Not by burning you, but by cooking the machinery inside, from within. So who actually dies this way? Not the people you would picture. Rarely the young and fit. It is overwhelmingly the old and the frail. And for reasons that make the fan even crueler. As we age, our bodies sweat less, and they sweat later. The thirst signal that should scream at you to drink grows quiet. So many older people are dehydrated and do not feel it. Common medications for heart conditions and blood pressure blunt sweating and circulation even further. So an elderly person can be sitting in a lethal room, not sweating, not thirsty, feeling only a little tired, while a fan blows oven-hot air over skin that can no longer cool itself. This is why public health guidance quietly reversed itself. For decades, the advice was simple. When it is hot, use a fan. Then agencies began warning that above roughly 95 degrees Fahrenheit, an electric fan may not protect you and could actually add to heat stress for vulnerable people. The message flipped from "turn it on" to "in extreme heat, a fan alone may harm rather than help." In the 2003 European heatwave, tens of thousands of people died in their homes. Around 70,000 excess deaths across the continent. The great majority of them elderly, many in rooms where the air had crossed the line the wall thermometer never warned them about. So what is the honest rule? When does a fan help and when does it hurt? Below the crossover, when the air is cooler than your skin, a fan is exactly what it has always been. Use it freely, it is a friend. Even above skin temperature, if the air is dry, a fan still helps because your sweat can keep pace. The danger zone is narrow and specific. Air hotter than your skin and humid enough that sweat can no longer evaporate. In that exact window, a bare fan is pushing heat into a body that cannot shed it. The fix is not to suffer in still air. It is to give evaporation back its power. Spray your skin or clothing with water so the fan has something to evaporate. Wet a cloth on your neck. And for a frail person in genuine extreme heat, the real answer is not a fan at all, but a cooler room, cool water on the skin, and getting out of that air entirely. Because here is the truth to actually carry out of this. The fan was never the villain. The fan only ever moves air. What decides whether that is mercy or menace is a single invisible line. The point where the air outside you becomes hotter than the skin trying to cool you, and the moisture in it robs your sweat of its last escape. So the next time a heat wave settles in and you reach for that switch out of pure habit, you will know what almost nobody around you does. A fan does not make air cold. It only makes air move. And moving air can carry your heat away, or pour someone else's heat straight into you. The blades never change, only which side of the line you are standing on.